Hello and welcome to Casual Veteran Gamer. In the video today I'm going to be going through the level 1 Druid spells. I'm going to be giving a bit of information about each of them, give a rating, the reasons for my rating. Then at the end of the video I'm going to give a quick overview of the spells and which ones I think you should probably pick and not pick. Right, I'm going to go through this in alphabetical order, not in order of ranking or rating. Animal Friendship is a spell where you can charm a beast to convince it not to attack. It gets to make a wisdom saving throw, and the beast cannot have an intelligence of 4 or higher, and the spell ends if you or one of your companions harms the beast. This sounds like it could be useful. It's very appropriate for a druid, but the number of times that this comes into effect is very slim. I came to this point just trying to see if I can cast it on the wargs. I can't, because wargs are, unfortunately for us, monstrosities. So we can't even convince this warg not to attack. The number of times beasts actually attack you currently is, like I said already, pretty small. It doesn't require concentration, but as soon as anyone harms it, it's going to start attacking again. So for a spell slot, you might get to delay the animal trying to hurt you, and if it's anything like Charm Person, which I'll cover very soon, it's only going to affect the caster anyway. This, as far as I'm concerned, is probably worse than Charm Person. I'm struggling to think of a good rating to give this. I'm currently, I think this is the first spell I'm going to give a 1 out of 10 to. We just don't need it, and it's only going to affect the caster, and it only lasts 10 turns anyway, so even if you get your 10 turns of it, the animal's going to attack you. Like, what's the point of this spell? It's just a waste of a spell slot. Thankfully for druids, you know, they can just unprepare the spell. But you know, it's not like wizards where you have to choose which spells you have in your book and then prepare them. We can just never use it. So unless someone can find a really good place to use this, there's one fight maybe you could use it, but even then it's a wisdom saving throw. It's not even certain to work. So yeah, please do let me know if my 1 out of 10 is too low. If there's some really good use, maybe boost it up to 2 out of 10, but I cannot recommend this spell whatsoever. Charm Person. Magically charm a humanoid that you can see. They get a saving throw of wisdom. A charmed creature can't harm the charmer, and the charmer has advantage on charisma checks against the creature. So, first of all, it's a saving throw, which sucks. Look at that percentage chance to work, 36%. That is awful. I can try it. Oh, let's just see. Oh, they're charmed. That was that's lucky. But even though it's like, wow, they're charmed, all that means is they can't attack the spellcaster. They can still attack another member of the party. So I'm going to attack the charmed creature with another member of the party. And now they're not charmed. Which is really bad. This is an awful spell at the moment. If maybe if you're playing with just one character in your party, it could be useful. You can stop yourself being attacked. But as it stands, the chance that she attacks them anyway, the chance of it working is stupidly low. And then the benefit of it is minimal at best, and you can easily lose this. You do get advantage on charisma checks against that target, but that's not useful here. And outside of combat, this means you're going to have to use a spell slot knowing ahead of time that you're going to have charisma checks against a certain person and use a level 1 spell slot for it. This is really one of the worst spells, unless you're in a desperate situation where you've got your druid is the last person alive, everyone else is on the ground, and you've got one humanoid enemy, and you're going to take that 1 in 3 or 1 in, depends on the enemy you're fighting, but like 1 in 3 or 1 in 2 chance, and use your action to do it. Honestly, you may as well just get one of your members back up. For me, this is maybe a 2 out of 10. Perhaps there's going to be some situation someone's found a use for it, but this is not worth a spell slot. Even if this was a cantrip, I wouldn't be using this, because I'd rather use my action for something else. So yeah, really not impressed with Charm Person. So in patch 4, Create Water got changed into Create or Destroy Water. choose to call forth rain or destroy a water-based surface. Range 30 feet. Let's show you create water first. And this shows the area that will be basically covered in water. So I'm just going to stick it in front here. Now, in combat, it's mostly not that useful, but I'm going to try and show you a potential use in combat. So, one potential combination of spells with Create Water is using anything that does lightning damage. Actually going to put it straight into the surface. So, electrifies the surface. Does a minimal amount of damage, 1d4 damage. Ooh, apparently Tamrin was vulnerable to lightning damage. Ah, that's because he is wet. So this is a decent combination to use, but you do need to have someone who knows Witch Bolt, which itself isn't an amazing spell. But you can create an electrified surface. Now, let's show you. And they take that damage every turn while they're inside that water. Okay, so now I'm going to try and destroy water. You can see the area it's covering. And the water's gone. Inside combat, destroy water is only going to be useful if there is an electrified surface or some water surface that's causing damage. Outside of combat, create and destroy waters, I'd say mostly useful for putting out any fire that's on the ground. I suppose you could use that in combat as well. Overall, the spell has a couple of uses, which is not amazing, but can be useful. I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. This is the sort of spell that I probably won't be using in combat, but will switch outside of combat to put out some fire and switch it back for another attacking spell. If I've got a large area, I've got a lot of enemies in one area, then I'll try and use it offensively, but I don't think it's worth 2 spell slots, as in create and destroy water and a Witch Bolt. Shock and Grasp should work as well. Shock and Grasp doesn't work because it has to attack a creature. Yeah, so I don't think it's worth 2 spell slots to create that surface for just 1 or 2 enemies. Cure Wounds is the first of 2 healing spells Druids get at level 1 and level 2 level 1 spells. Heals 1d8 plus 3 hit points, has a range of 5 feet, uses an action to cast. At first glance this seems pretty good, but it's not that amazing. Its main use, I would say, is maybe healing people in this situation, where you can run up to them and use Cure Wounds, but if I can run up to them and use an action, I may as well just use Help rather than Cure Wounds. Admittedly, they get fewer hit points, but I've saved myself a spell slot, and I can use it for something else. Downsides, it's low range, and we can use food for healing. Outside of combat, we can be resting. I'm going to say more when I get to Healing Word, but overall, I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. I'm not even sure it deserves that, in all honesty. Its only benefit over Healing Word is it heals potentially more hit points. That's it. So Cure Wounds was 1d8 plus 3 hit points. Now we can't see exactly how many hit points this Water Davian Cheese Wheel will heal, but I can see it did 5 there, which isn't so bad, considering it only used a bonus action to eat that, not even an action. And outside of combat, we can see here we've taken some damage, just use the short rest function. So here I will use Entangle, level 1 conjuration spell, and what it does is find Sprout from the ground, turning it into difficult terrain and possibly entangling creatures within. There is a saving throw, strength saving throw, and concentration is required. So it's worth noting that there are 2 effects here. One, it makes the ground difficult terrain, and that's whether they pass their strength saving throw or not. And the other one is maybe that they are entangled, that they can't move. So let's try this. Actually, in this battle, it would be quite useful maybe to put it right in the middle here, because these insect devourers are going to come at me. Already mentioned, concentration is required, so I don't want this druid getting hit. If you're a bit worried about his appearance, I was just playing around. I wild chipped into a spider, and then got Shadowheart to cast Blessing of the Trickster. And when I came out of the spider form, this is what happened. And I may as well just for good measure use Shillelagh. Right. let's see their turns next. So I'm going to try and walk through. Oh, there's a space at the outside. They're going to go around. Yeah. So this is one of the downsides of Entangle. And actually, no. Not necessarily downsides. This is one of the points of Entangle, is that it can make enemies move to certain places, because the AI will try and avoid it. I'm going to cast it again, this time on, hopefully, both of them. Oh, they failed their saving throws. Does it show their... It doesn't show their rolls here. Just got entangled. Let's just examine it. Let's have a look. So for one turn, cannot move. Attack rolls against the creature have advantage, while the creature's attack rolls and dexterity saving throws have disadvantage. So if this buff applies, this is really good, because it's not only is that creature stuck in place, you've got automatic advantage, they've got disadvantage, and dexterity saving throws have disadvantage. So if you have any other people in your party who have a spell, I don't think I have one ready, have a spell where the enemy has to cast, okay, this wouldn't be a normal situation where I cast Faerie Fire and Entangle, but well, one of them still passed. So even with disadvantage they passed, they just happen to roll really well. So she'll come along, guiding bolt, 100%. The chance to hit is already very high anyway. So yeah, this is quite good. Now the problem with these level 1 spells and concentration is, while we're levels 1 and 2, it's fine that they take concentration, because there aren't many spells that have concentration. But by the time we get to level 3 as the character level, and we have level 2 spells, there are so many more spells that require concentration. So these druid spells that do require concentration, I am going to have to eventually compare them to the level 2 spells. So it's going to be playing against its rating. It's going to lower the rating a bit. Things to think about for the rating: it gives a good debuff. It stops enemy movement. It's still difficult terrain even if they pass their saving throw. And you can try and funnel enemies through different places, or just make it so they have to go through the difficult terrain. Downside though is it requires concentration, and they do get to make a saving throw against the debuff. And there are lots of concentration spells. But overall, I think this is worth it. Probably a 7 out of 10. If there were fewer spells that required concentration for a druid, it'd probably be higher. When we get to the level 2 spells, we'll find out that they're quite effective, some of them, really quite damaging. But this definitely has its uses. This is not a bad spell by any means, but there are probably better choices eventually. Faerie Fire is next. Encase multiple targets in colourful light, the target turns visible and attack rolls against the targets have advantage. Attack saves dexterity saving throw and concentration required. I have already covered this in a shorts video. However, let's show you the effect. Now you will see that the 2 enemies light up, but also so do these objects. So everything that's an object or creature will be targeted within the area. Also, it will affect allies, which you don't want it to do. You don't want your allies having attacks against them having advantage. So, wait, so I don't have to move too far. Right, that'll do. So, this is probably the main downside to Faerie Fire, and every spell that requires a saving throw is the chance of enemies passing saving throws is currently quite high, because our saving throw DCs are relatively low. However, if the spell had worked, it's really useful. It gives you advantage. Now there are lots of other ways to get advantage. You know, you've got backstab, being from hidden, being having high ground. But you're not always going to have those, and there are some situations where you want to be guaranteed to have advantage no matter what. And also they give off light, which helps you to see the enemies. And if there are invisible enemies, which doesn't really happen in the game at the moment, there's at least one fight where there is an enemy that's invisible, but prevents enemies from being invisible. Now, in the shorts video I gave it 8.5 out of 10, but after having a bit of discussion with some of you viewers and just thinking about it a bit more, I think I will lower my judgment of it now to 8 out of 10 rather than 8.5. The concentration thing is one of its big downsides as well, because as I've mentioned with other spells, once we get to level 3 with the Druids and have level 2 spells, this is going to be fighting for concentration and it's probably going to lose out. Comparing it to other level 1 spells though, it's decent. Fog Cloud is next, and it's the same as the Wizard version. There's nothing different about it. If you haven't already seen my Wizard video covering this, go check it out, because I'm going to make this quite short. So it creates an area where fog will be created, and creatures cannot make ranged attacks into or out of the fog. Concentration required, 60 feet range. The area effect is quite large. One of the best uses of this, it might seem a bit silly. Oh, I've made everyone blinded. But we can hide. I don't know if the Insect Devourer will get here. Oh, no, I wasn't supposed to do that. You can hide. Come back to you. And then... Ooh, it's immune to blinded. But the enemy doesn't know where to find us. Probably isn't going to attack us. The only downside to this is it requires concentration. If you're going to use it like this, for a level 1 spell it's 10 out of 10. If you're not going to use it like this, it's still really quite good. Just to make areas of the battlefield unable to be seen, hide behind, hide in. Probably still give it like a 9 out of 10. For Druids, as I've already mentioned, there will be lots of other spells where concentration is required. So Fog Cloud isn't necessarily as good a choice as a Wizard, but it's still very good. Goodberry conjures 4 magical berries for yourself or a companion. Creatures who eat a berry regain 1d4 hit points. Takes an action to cast, uses a spell slot. Doesn't require concentration, and they last until the next long rest. I recently made a shorts video about this, gave it a 5 out of 10. I mean, it's okay on the Land Druid essentially, because the Land Druid can regain spell slots using natural recovery. But otherwise, we can normally just use food to heal ourselves, or short rest or long rest. It's not so bad, you know, it's kind of... They can replace potions outside of combat. In combat, if you really want healing, and you're thinking of using Goodberry or a potion, you're probably going to be using a potion if your hit points are that low. So yeah, it's alright, go watch the shorts video. But there are normally better options for healing in the game. You can, however, I don't think anyone would seriously do this, after creating the good berries you can throw them at your enemies to try and do 1d4 damage if that is your wish. Healing Word requires a bonus action. This is going to be compared to Cure Wounds because they're both level 1 healing spells. And of the two spells, this is easily the better spell. For 2 main reasons. 1, it requires a bonus action instead of an action, so you can still do something else with your turn, such as an attack or even another spell, which you can't do with Cure Wounds because it's an action. Secondly, you can cast it at range, 60 feet range. I don't have to run up to CVG over here to go and heal him. And you can cast it on yourself, right? You don't have to cast it on someone else. Now, obviously, the healing is lower, but if you're thinking about using Cure Wounds, it's normally almost just as good eating a piece of food. Probably normally be using healing outside of combat for the most part. Where Healing Word really, really shines is if one of your members is downed. And you don't have to run to your member, like you'd have to get up close to them. You don't have to use an action to get them back up, which you would have to use help for normally. And so you can use a bonus action from 60 foot range and get them straight back up. So yeah, Healing Word. As a healing spell, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. It would be nice if it, it'd be nice if it's higher, but the healing was higher. But that's probably asking for too much. But at the end of the day, it is a healing spell, and apart from the situation where someone is downed, often don't need healing spells. Jump is a transmutation spell. Touch a creature to triple its jumping distance. I've covered this in a Wizard video before. Doesn't require concentration, which is nice. Only lasts 10 turns, so probably only going to last 1 battle. Now, something that we now have, which you didn't have when I was when I recorded the wizard video are druids. Let's cast it on myself, so fairly decent jumping range. I can now jump up to approximately 45 feet, but what I'm going to do, turn into a spider. Now, I can't show you this turn, the jumping range of the spider now, but I will show you on the next turn. So, jump previously made people have a ridiculous range, but spiders start with a very large range already. Now, it says the range of the arachnid jump is 110 feet, which comes all the way out to here. I can barely get it on the screen. And in fact, I think the spider can't jump that full range, because when you get towards the edge of the range, you can see the spider needs to move. So if I get about the maximum range before it moves, so really the spider can now jump about just over 100 feet, which is insane. I can in theory nearly jump over to the ruins over here from this section. The only downside to this really is that it takes a spell slot and only lasts a battle. But if you've got a battle where you want someone to be jumping around a lot, moving around a lot, getting extra speed, jump is the spell to use. Overall, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. It doesn't do any direct damage, which is always useful, because if you can kill someone, you're much more likely to survive. But it's not a bad spell. It's a spell that's got its uses, and compared to other level 1 spells, it's got decent utility, and you can cast it on other people. Casting it, I don't have Lae'zel here, in fact I'm just about to free her, but casting it on Lae'zel, for example, is a really good choice. Longstrider. Inflicts. Longstrider. Inflicts. Touch creature to increase its speed by 10 feet. Range is 5 feet, so you have to run up to the creature. And this lasts until next long rest and doesn't require concentration. The only real downside to this is that it uses a level 1 spell slot, so you've got to weigh up whether you want to use this or another spell. I would say if you're thinking about using Longstrider, it's probably more effective on a Circle of the Land druid. So you could, at the beginning of the day, cast it on yourself, cast it on anyone else, and then use your natural recovery to get the spell slots back. And so now, you can see here, speed is 45 feet. This is a wood elf, so their speed was already 35 feet. Now it's 45 feet, which is really good for a character that we can create. Normally we're limited to 30 feet for most humanoids. It's just wood elves get 35, dwarves and halflings get 25 feet. I'm going to give this a 7 out of 10, because it is a good buff, and it doesn't require concentration, but it does require a spell slot, and you've got to be really thinking about whether you want this extra 10 feet, or you want to use Thunderwave, or Fog Cloud, or Entangle, or something else. Speak with animals. Gain the ability to comprehend and verbally communicate with beasts. You can use a level 1 or level 2 spell slot, doesn't matter which one. You can't cast it on someone else. You have to cast it on yourself. It lasts indefinitely until your next long rest, and requires concentration. So let's go find someone to speak to. Come here.
Get out!
Right. So yeah, I'm now speaking to Squirrel.
The squirrel lunges at your foot and bites it.
Oof, I've not actually done this before. Does it feel really mean? I don't think a druid would kick a squirrel.
You claim victory over the squirrel. And you're not sure why.
Oh no, I've killed it. Right. Not really what I wanted. But what would I expect? Poor Timber. So yeah, the bit of a downside, it requires concentration. So as soon as you get into a battle and use concentration, you lose this ability. If you're going for long periods without any fights, this is fine to use. However, I'm just about to show you why you don't really need to use this spell. So one of the kind of problems with Speak with Animals is that if your druid is wild shaped, then they automatically speak with animals. So the spell itself is kind of pointless. In the end, my rating for Speak with Animals is basically really low because there's an alternative way to do it that doesn't use a spell slot and replenishes on a short rest, so like why wouldn't you use that? So overall, I mean, I guess I can give it a 3 out of 10 because it is actually does have uses. You can have some really interesting conversations with animals. I think it's really cool speaking with the animals, but it's just another way of doing it. When you've got a druid, there's no need for this spell. So, I mean, yeah, you can use it, but really keep in mind that you're probably much better off just using the wild shape instead. Thunderwave is next. Now, I'm going to be trying to use this in a situation where it's got particularly good use, which is it does 2d8 thunder damage and pushes away creatures and objects, but the targets get to make a Constitution saving throw. If they pass a throw, they don't get pushed back. They'll still take half the damage, so this spell is guaranteed to deal some damage. And it's an area effect. We can see the cube at the front, and I'm not going to cast it here, but we can see that you can catch your allies within the area, and you will potentially hurt them. So let's try this here. Alright, they passed the saving throw, but still dealt some damage. So things to think about is that it is a saving throw, but at least they still suffer some damage. And also the area of effect is both a blessing and a curse, because you can hit more than one creature, but if your allies are nearby, you're going to have to position it really carefully. One thing that's very noteworthy of this spell, though, is that it's the only level 1 druid spell that actually deals damage. So currently, if you want to use your spell slots from your druid to deal damage, you have to pick Thunderwave. So taking all that into account, I'm going to give it 8 out of 10 because of the guaranteed damage and the potential to push things back. But I'm not putting it any higher because you're kind of forced to take it, and you've got to be careful of your allies. And there is a saving throw, so it's good. I'm happy to use this spell, and obviously we do get chances to knock people off high places. Let's try again. There we are, and they took damage because they fell a long way. So yeah, Thunderwave, probably want to have it on your druid, but it's not an absolute necessity. Overall, I'm fairly happy with the level 1 druid spells. As I mentioned with Thunderwave, it's a bit underwhelming in the sense that there aren't very many damaging spells. In fact, there's only one directly damaging spell. We can, for example, I forgot to say it earlier, set light to Entangle. We can use Create Water to make electrified surfaces, but they all require combinations. I found myself, once I get to level 3, that I'm probably not going to be using quite a lot of the level 1 spells, and I feel it's much nicer to have more of these level 2 spells prepared. But there are definitely some level 1 spells you'll continue using throughout the whole playthrough. It's a bit of a shame that there are 3 healing spells. They've all got the slightly different uses, but in the end I'm going to pick Healing Word. Don't need Cure Wounds or Goodberry really. And a few of the spells are pointless or not very good. So probably end up picking the same few spells. So don't need Goodberry, don't need Speak with Animals, Jump is fine, Animal Friendship's not very good, Charm Person's not very good. You'll only have Create or Destroy Water when you have a particular situation that needs it. Probably won't have Cure Wounds, maybe we'll have Entangle, maybe have Faerie Fire, maybe have Fog Clouds, maybe we won't have Jump and Longstrider. In fact, as Circle the Land Druid, just a reminder, you may as well cast Longstrider at the beginning of the day, and then don't prepare it, and just use your natural recovery. It's quite likely to end up with these 5, maybe 6 or 7 spells that are generally the better spells. And eventually I'll make a video about the level 2 spells, and I think it's a bit more varied, a bit more interesting. Right, that's it for this one. If you made it this far, please do consider subscribing, it is greatly appreciated. Please leave a comment if you don't agree with any of my ratings. I quite often missed out just 1 or 2 small details which can change the rating of a spell. Please do like the video if you've made it this far and you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.